Okay. Okay, well, in respect of everyone's time, we've just hit 11 o'clock here in Winnipeg. So we might get started with the webinar. So I'd just like to introduce everybody. My name's Aaron Newnham, and I'm here on behalf of Convenience and Car Wash Canada. And you're attending today the fourth or fifth webinar in our educational online series. So today we have with us Ron from SiteCheck Research Group, and he's going to talk to us today about some awesome software he's developed. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ron to present, and we'll get the webinar started. So Ron, I'm just transferring the ability over to you to be able to share your screen. Welcome, Ron.
Well, good morning, and or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. So thank you, Aaron, for that introduction. I'm going to be joined by Doug Denhode, who is our software developer, and I am the founder and president of SiteCheck Research. So I'm
Ron,
just
can you hear me?
Good morning, Doug.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting to for my share to highlight so I can share. There we go. There we have it. Okay, that's great. Well, thanks again. And the purpose for today is we have developed a new piece of software in the last, I believe, 8 months called Heat Maps. And we would like to demonstrate by this video conference just exactly how it works and let you know that we're available at any time to further review and to further demonstrate. So what I'd like to do first is maybe give you a little history of who we are. SiteCheck has been in business since 1993, and I founded the company. I worked for a large grocery wholesaler in southern Alberta. At that time, we developed a convenience package with Imperial Oil. We named it Plus Foods. I stayed with the company probably about 11 years, and I ended my term. I moved on to form my own company. But while I was there, I realized there was a need for better research choices in Canada. So initially, I started out with Lotus 123 and Postal Maps, and I had a DOS gravity model. Of course, we advanced that quite rapidly over time, and we developed FuelFax SAM, FuelFax Heat, and of course, our sales potential studies. These are our clients that we've worked for on and off over the years. With SiteCheck Research, you can see there's Canadian companies and also U.S. companies. These include corporate dealings, working with dealers, our license holders, and industry consultants. So we essentially have 3 products. We have FuelFax Heat, we have FuelFax SAM, and we have our turnkey sales potential studies. Today, we want to show you FuelFax Heat. And so this is the final product that you would get when you use FuelFax Heat. And what I'd like to do now is simply show you a simple demonstration in the actual software itself. So I'm going to switch programs. So this is the FuelFax Heat model. It is a joint system with our SAM model, and FuelFax Heat was derived from the SAM model itself. So this is the main page for the heat modeling, and you can see we have a sorting tool here. We have markets, area, projects, all the brands and retail types. So I've already preset this, so I've left the project window blank, and I'm going to simply click on the project button. So this is the screen that's prompting me to name the project. So I'm going to call it CCC Calgary Void Test. I'll give it a number 4, 2020.
Ron, before we go too much further, we've just had a question come in.
Yes.
So the question is, how is heat maps different than simply using a spreadsheet analysis of a trade area?
Oh, good question. Well, you can use spreadsheets. They've been very effective with many companies. But the biggest difference is that in FuelFacts Heat, you get a visual picture of where you can look for potential locations. So you can use your spreadsheet, which will give you averages and maybe some factoring. But the glory in the heat maps is you can take that very same spreadsheet, apply it in the heat map model, and it'll actually direct you via the map where you actually need to look for new locations. In other words, where there's a void in the trade area, and that's the biggest difference. There are many other components to the heat mapping, which you'll see as we move forward as well.
Great, thank you.
So what I've done is I've created a new map, and it's going to open up in our Maptitude model, which is connected to our heat map model itself. So now we're going to get a map of Canada, and it's going to pop in with a map of Calgary. It's just going to update. It will take maybe another 10 seconds. So there you have Calgary today. So this database is our own database, but FuelFacts Heat is actually designed to work with Kent Marketing. We've worked with them for years. So this is your volumetric data and your station locations with Kent Marketing. And you can see it's a very busy map. So now I've decided where I want to look. I want to look in this area over here. So I'm going to go, I'm just going to go into my my Maptitude model, and I'm going to zoom into my area. So this is the area that I'm interested in, and so I'm going to just center the map a little bit, and then I'm going to begin to draw my trade area and bring in my competitors. So I'm going to go back to the SAM model, and I will click on the trade area button. It's going to ask me for a price per liter in the trade area. Well, as you know, fuel pricing is very volatile, and the data that we use is annual data. So I'm going to leave it at $1 a liter for now.
My ESSO in my neighborhood went up to 99.9 yesterday, just so that would be an accurate number for you, Ron.
Well, that makes it pretty darn close. So then thanks, Doug. So now I switch over to the Maptitude model, and it's going to bring in the demographics. So there we have our demographics now, and each blue person is now represented as a enumeration area. It's a StatsCan data source, and each area represents so many liters that they spend per year on fuel, and various other attributes like income level and age and so on. So I'm going to click on select trade area, and I'm going to simply highlight my area using the mouse. So that now brings in all of the sectors. I'm going to go back to the SAM portion, and now I'm going to select my competitors. Back to the Maptitude model. Highlight this. And that'll bring in all the competition. So now I have two layers in my model. I'm going to go back to the SAM model. And if I click on my binoculars, I will see all of these stations. You'll notice the population gets faded and all the other competitors disappear off the map. So this is my site. It's quite brand new and beautiful, as you can see. And these are my competitors. So this was all done from my desktop. I did not have to leave. I simply brought in the Kent data in a one-button import. I went on satellite imagery, took the photos, and then I just built my model, as you've seen. So I'm going to go back to my site.
Oh, speaking of satellite, Ron, when you do get back to the map, do you want to show how you can flip to that in
Yes,
Maptitude?
I will. Thanks, Doug. So typically, you would add a site to the map anywhere in the trade area. And then the model, once you click on the screen, you then fill in these details. And then this is where the actual inputs are you put into the heat map for the model to actually perform. So you can see we have lots of attributes. There's the pricing, fueling positions, the hours of service, and this is actually part of the volumetric data that you would see later, pricing position, and of course all the grades and the service levels. So once the site is in, then I simply click on the heat map tab, and then I click all of these check boxes. I'm going to leave the score at 100, and I'm going to use current population. You can use year 3 or year 5 for your population, but we'll just leave it at current for today. And then I'm going to just simply click on Run the Heat Map. So now what the model is actually doing, it's measuring the distances between 100 different sites and all of the sectors that you saw earlier in the blue nodes. And so it's quite a process, but really what it's doing is it's evaluating every competitor and every blue dot or blue node, and is giving each one a score value. So we used 100. There'll be competitors in the model that will arrive at maybe 150s, and there'll be competitors that arrive at 60s. So we use the average because that is usually the best for the modeling purpose. You can adjust your score depending on your brand. You know, some brands, depending on who they are, can can use a little bit higher score. Some of the national brands would run 120, 125. There's a few regionals that are very strong. In particular on the prairies, there's some that could be maybe 130. There's some regionals in Vancouver that might be a 130. So it does depend on which brand you're using, and the branding scores are very similar to that in SAM. So from experience, we just apply it accordingly.
Ron, under what circumstances would you use something other than 100 when you're running a heat map, and what effect would you expect that to have on a heat map? Would it become hotter with a higher score?
It would become hotter. And if it was a really strong brand, and Doug, it does depend on the trade area. We have, and many of our audience would know this, but, we have brands that are on, in the Maritimes, for instance, that are quite strong, but then if you go into Newfoundland, aren't as strong. Similarly, you might have a strong customer acceptance factor or score in the Calgary market. You may not have as strong of customer acceptance in Edmonton. So you can expect higher volumes, but it is a little subjective depending on the market that you're going into.
So 100's conservative.
100 is conservative.
Okay. And I probably interrupted you, but just to point out to folks watching, the top green bar is a progression bar that just goes from kind of 0 to 100 or 1 to 10 as the balancing is worked out and each of the relative scores of the existing locations is computed. And then the second grid is actually an overlay, a 10 by 10 positional geographical overlay that encompasses the trade area that Ron drew dynamically. And what's happening behind the scenes is we're basically lifting this site that we've assigned to a score of 100 to, and we're moving it, physically positioning it in each of those 10 by 10 squares within that trade area, and recalculating what the score, what the projected volume would be if we were able to secure that site, given the population and the relative distance from each of the other locations. We don't include traffic within our heat map model. That's an extra level we can go to within SAM to further refine the numeric estimate of what that location might expect to do if it were built there. But of course, heat map's purpose is to give kind of a broader view of where to focus on, so that you then can take this information and springboard it into an analysis using FOBO and SAM. So I'll maybe why don't you do the reveal of what's happening on the map now that I've kind of laid out the square there, Ron.
Yes, thanks, Doug. Yes, you can see the different colors. Of course, green is, would be a light location. The yellow is probably average in the middle, and then red or hot. And you can actually, once you do this, you can adjust the cutoffs, but it's between 7.4 and 10.2. That's our range that heat maps automatically assigns. So now, it was a little faster than I thought. So now what's going to happen is the Maptitude model is now going to paint this entire mapping. So you're going to see a bit of a simulation of what you just saw. Well, you're actually going to see the real heat map from the simulation that you just saw.
Ron, can I just, interrupt for a second? We actually just, we missed that last little bit. It cut out for a second there. So if you could perhaps just repeat that last minute or so.
Sure. Was that me speaking, Aaron?
Yeah, it just went. You cut out for about a minute, or not quite a minute.
Okay. So what I was saying is the big grid, which is 100 squares, you can see the color coded squares, and the green is essentially below 7.4 million, as you can see in the cutoff range, and the yellow is, the median volumes, and the red are the hot spots, which would be up around the 10 meg site. And so this is a thumbnail simulation of what the heat map is actually going to display. The heat map, of course, is more detailed and more refined, but this would be a thumbnail of what we're going to see in a minute.
Ron, we've just had another question come in. So who is using this feature and how?
Well, it's I can tell you we've just launched last fall, and of course we were just getting out of the gate. We did run into the COVID pandemic, which did slow us down a bit. We have 2 subscribers to the new feature. Suncor has been using it since the fall, and Sobeys in the east for their Shell brand for Quebec and the Maritimes. And just how they're using it, I have to be careful because there's confidentiality, but I can say that, they're essentially using it as designed, and that's to look for potential locations. Instead of, waiting for the call from the developer or waiting, from the real estate division. Often they'll get calls for locations out in the middle of nowhere, and this gives them a really good idea of where they should be looking in that particular trade area. So it's about trying to find the best locations with spending the least amount of time up front, so you're not spinning your wheels.
Great. Thanks, Ron.
You bet. Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to move into the heat map now, the final result. So I'm going to click on the Maptitude map. I often do just a little bit of cleanup just so it's a little easier to see. So I simply click on my arrow, and I'm going to highlight this layer and just delete it. Then I'm going to highlight this area and simply make it opaque. So there you can see the heat map. This is the final result of our work. And so this is, again, the trade area. And you can see the similarities between this picture and the thumbnail. This one gives you on the right-hand side a pretty defined volume you can expect within these color ranges. So below, 53,000 liters, 530,000 liters per year would be in the green perimeter to 1.4 megs, all the way up to 9.14 megs to 10 megs, which is in the red area, basically in the middle to the south of the trade area.
Ron, do you want to switch to satellite at this point and maybe talk about residential areas and lakes and golf courses versus major thoroughfares, just before
Sure.
people get too excited and snap up that top left red block?
Okay. So I simply click on map. So there's a lot of functionality in Maptitude that's available. We use a very small part of the Maptitude potential, but there's lots of things you can do with Maptitude. It would be a premium GIS package that you can do a lot of other stuff with.
Yeah, and once the travel restrictions are lifted, if you're looking for a good reason to go to Boston, Ron and I actually went out and met with the Maptitude folks a couple of years back and did some, I think it was a 3-day on-site course, and it was excellent. We are using the engine of their software, but the niceties they've built on top of it are quite incredible.
Yeah. I'm going to go over to Google Satellite. You can see you can go directly into it, and you know I guess with the heat map, it actually doesn't show the heat map, but typically you can see all of the stations and the trade area, and it's very visual.
Yeah, it might be just a matter of layering, Ron. Had we put that on first, it might have put the heat map on top of it, or you might be able to switch that layer to be the back layer,
Perhaps.
or you can just toggle it off again. How do you usually use it, with the street or in the kind of the map mode?
I use it in the map mode, but at the beginning.
Yeah.
So there's the satellite now, and then without the satellite, no, it's not going to do it. Let me do this. Okay, it's a layer thing. Okay, that's fine.
I think you just need to turn your heat map colors back on there too, if that's what you're looking for.
There we go. And so that is the final product. And now I'm going to go back in and finish my presentation with the PowerPoint slide. Any more questions at all?
There doesn't seem to be any just yet, Rod.
Okay. So this was the resulting end result that we just showed you from the demo. And now I'm going to go into the pricing. So we have three pricing options, and for two for heat maps and one for SAM. So the first column is you can buy heat maps from a single site perspective. If you want to just look at a particular trade area, you don't really want to buy the entire province. You can choose to buy them one at a time. There's an annual fee. We provide the actual hardware. There's a few extra costs, the Maptitude cost for the mapping and demographic data. So that gives you a little more flexibility. You don't have to, you may only be in a certain region of a province, and that's a nice option. Now, if you want to look at all of your network, perhaps the entire province or more than one province, you can license the entire province, or you can add on additional provinces. So the first province is 17,500, and then you can then add on provinces at a lesser rate, and you can actually license all of Canada for $50,000. There is some training included, a few extras, Maptitude, and the demographic data. And then we have our SAM on the far right, which is the gravity modeling, which gives some very refined projections. There is lots of detail. Again, it's a Kent data import. You can then fill in all of the characteristics, which I'm going to show at the end in a video. And that cost is $25,000 per year. That's for one province. And then if you also combine it with FuelFax Heat, we will then discount that as well. And I certainly would love to talk to you on that further. If you have any questions, we can custom quote something to suit your needs. So it looks like we have some time remaining. So I wanted to show you a few more features in heat maps. We have a volume estimator, which has been very handy for a lot of our non-read markets and in the US. So we developed an algorithm over time using a lot of our data and measuring number of fills over time during the day. And so we've been using this quite extensively, And so it's built right in. You can do estimating, and it's proven to be quite accurate. So that's included. We also have the volume updater, which is a direct import from Kent data. You may already have Kent data. You may have already paid for it. So it's simply a click of the button, and then you can bring in all the data that you have for Kent, and it's resident in the model. We also have a data sorting and an Excel export. So the data sorting, you can see, you can click on various attributes, and it will then filter and screen them out in the Excel spreadsheet. You can take your own brand or other brands, and it'll give you a good idea of who's doing what in the trade area. You can also click on the spreadsheet and export that and do all kinds of analysis as well. You can also click on the bottom charts. If you click on that chart, you'll see historic volume. It'll give you an idea of what the trending has been in your stations and, of course, in your competitors. You also get a demographic layer, which is StatsCan data. This comes with every model, and depending on the geography that you have, but you can see there's the age, there's population growth, household income, and expenditures.
Ron, did you mention how these reports are generated?
They are generated right here, Doug. Good question. So there is a reporting tab. And so this is built right in. You click on any of these and you will generate a full report. You need to append them together. You can do the mapping. I put a picture of the charts on one sample of the charts along the bottom of this slide. You can do volumes. You can do prices, and of course the demographics that I showed previously. So I just want to review the key messages. So FuelFacts Heat, pretty self-explanatory, but it's easy to use. There's a great interface with your current fuel volume. Has a lot of attributes with the Maptitude interface that you can use for other parts of your analysis. So you look for hotspot opportunities on a map. You can go anywhere in Canada. In fact, if it's a non-read market, you can use the estimator and build your model with volume and still build a heat map. You can also do that in SAM. There's a complete toolbox, which has historical fuel breakdown, grade breakdown, and of course demographics. You can export to Excel. You can build in a Word document processor, which is what we call a one swim lane. You don't need any more software to go with it. And all of these findings, you can option to go into SAM and refine your projection.
So Ron, we had another question come in. I think what it's asking, so the question is, who and how is all of the data collected? Is there a cost to access the data once a company signs up for the program?
The data is distributed by Kent Marketing. So you have to purchase their volumetric data. It's all predicated on Kent data because you need the competitive volume. And with that data comes, the characteristics needed to run heat maps. So you don't need to go get any data. The demographic data we distribute, we purchase that from StatsCan, and that's comes with the model. There's an extra fee for it, which I would just quote along with a purchase. So the data would be all resident on your laptop, and you don't have to go get it yourself.
And you don't have to be on the internet, I guess, if you are doing field studies, is maybe worth mentioning too.
Yeah.
And Ron, as far as the shelf life of the information, how often does Kent refresh its data? Site check, just to refresh my memory, how often do we redo our StatsCan? And if you had, once you had kind of this year's version of both, how important is it to keep that current year after year as you reassess the edge of a city that's expanding, for example?
It's quite important to continue to keep your data up to date. There's lots of areas. I mean, most of the major cities in Canada, or certainly in the West, there's lots of growth around the perimeter. So you want to keep your StatsCan data. We use a data provider, and they will update the high growth areas based from postal codes and so on. So you want to make sure that you stay on top of that you have current demographic data. And the Kent data, a lot of companies subscribe. They buy so many reads per year. They also buy the historical data from Kent as well. But I believe Kent would read a major market like Toronto or Calgary maybe 6 times a year. Typically in the smaller secondary markets, I think they're 4 times a year, Doug, they update that. And
Okay.
you simply contact them, ask for the latest quarter of volume data in the heat map spreadsheet or the heat map MDE, and they'll send it to you. You simply click on the import button, and it will update all your volumes.
Okay. And then touching on one of the earlier questions about in comparison to spreadsheets, assuming someone was using heat map and had, or maybe heat map and SAM, I'll make it a two-part question, and they had current data from Kent, they had the latest census data from StatsCan, and they didn't miss a Costco, for example, which, true story, happens occasionally.
Yes.
With heat map, in comparison to SAM, I know SAM is very accurate, plus or minus when somebody builds something. I'll let you reveal what the plus or minus percent is. But then relative to SAM, just so people have a sense of it, how close would they expect the volumes that are being predicted on a heat map to be?
The volume on heat map is really it's a density model, so it's based on population density. So you're going to have for instance, some power centers, some industrial areas where there's no population, where you're not going to get any heat on the map. That said, once you move into SAM, you can then apply the traffic to your data, and that is something that has to be done by the end user. You apply the traffic and build a SAM model, and you will see exactly how much volume you would do in the areas that would not indicate that on the heat map. So heat map is really density driven, and we suggest, if you're going to use it for projections, you can, but you want to be sure that you have at least above average traffic for the trade area and a good arterial, and it's kind of the arterial that's going into the heat map area. You wouldn't take a red square at the back of the population node and plan to build there. What we're saying is that there's the potential there because there's a void with all the other stations that are distant from that trade area, but you want to find the arterial going into that area, and of course the proper zone space.
Okay. And as far as a plus or minus on the prediction goes, are you quoting anything like that these days?
Not on heat maps, no. It's too new.
Too variable?
Yeah, and it's we don't have any. It's only 6-8 months old. We don't have any results yet, but
Okay.
they're making some good decisions.
Yeah.
Our clients are quite happy with that, and A SAM model is typically running plus or minus 10%. We've had the odd one that has been off the grid, either high or low, and sometimes it's things that we can't control. And some of them, there's one or two we just couldn't explain. The model is very accurate for the most part, but there's the odd outlier where it can come down to the previous operator or the current operator. Of course, we can't control that.
Okay, so in general, heat map will get you in the ballpark, but to really be more accurate on predictions, you'd still recommend moving to a SAM model to get your final number.
Yes, absolutely. And so the heat map it's like a pre-screening tool in some ways. And it gives you a general idea where you want to look. In fact, you can go into some small towns, smaller trade areas, and the volume is, might be 1.5 to 2 million liters. So a lot of companies just simply move on. So there's no opportunity there. And it will come out in the heat map itself. I mean, the heat map might give you red, but the red might be 2 million liters. So, if that meets your benchmark, great. But if not, you just move on.
That's a good point. The green to red spectrum always spreads from that light green to that dark red, but the range you have to pay attention to because it could be small volumes or big.
Sure.
Yeah, good point. Sorry, I'm now stealing your script. What else did you have?
I think that's it now for this. I would like to play the video, the SAM video. I'm going to go right to our webpage. Nope, that's not it. I'll just play it right here.
Are you missing opportunities? We know how painful a wrong decision can be, especially when considering where to build or who to buy. In a world where everyone is trying to find the perfect location, just picking and jumping in with both feet doesn't always end well. Overwhelming? It doesn't have to be. We have a simple tool for you. It's fast and easy like never before. Increase accuracy, lower risk, lower cost, increase speed, and enjoy the simplicity of heat. It's a game changer. A heat map solution that shows you real-time, fact-based options for choosing sites. Heat is a new solution available on the FuelFacts platform developed by SiteCheck Research Group. We've been forecasting with the SAM model for over 20 years and know what we're doing. From the purchase of real estate, including acquisition in new-to-industry, all the way to communicating at the executive level, FuelFacts SAM has a proven track record of identifying the best sites and avoiding the worst ones. And now you can use heat maps to zero in and aim straight. Avoid bad locations and stop missing the best ones. Run FuelFacts Heat. With this new tool, you can get ahead of the competition and gain a big advantage with little training required. The steps are simple. Select your market and area and name your project. Then go to the map. Select your competitors. Select your planned trade area and set your fuel price. FuelFacts Heat brings in all the relevant demographic data, each identified by the blue icon. Select what demographic data you want to bring into the model by outlining your trade area. A click of the mouse compiles the data and completes the first phase of the model. Now you can see the outlets that have been brought into the model as well as the capture of your new site. Details include the brand, hours of operation, brand type, ancillary components, number of fueling positions, and the type of pricing required. You can also see other competitors. Your site summary is where you access the heat map application. Check all the boxes to complete the entire heat map. Select the year to analyze, apply the appropriate score, and run the heat map. Balancing simulates the trade area based on population density, existing sales, distance traveled, and site characteristics. Within minutes, the heat map is calculated and projects within your trade area. The thumbnail will show hotspots in red. When you switch to the heat map, a gradient of colors identify low-volume locations for high-volume ones. The dark red area is your desired hotspot, and the volume grid displayed at the side references the projected volumes for each color. A fast and simple solution to identifying the best location. There's even more FuelFacts Heat can do for you to make your life easier. If you return to the main menu and click the toolbar, you can examine the data more closely, sort based on filters, display various graphs on different attributes of the trade area. Then, with a click of a button, you can adjust some settings and print a professional-looking report. FuelFacts Heat is easy to work with, so enjoy the game. It's simple, reflects real life, is flexible, fast, strategic, and powerful. With FuelFacts Heat in your toolbox, you can enjoy the freedom to spend more time with your family and do what's really important while becoming a market leader. The anxiety of selecting a site is not necessary anymore. FuelFacts Heat is not an exact science, but it does identify a good path to follow. Once you find your areas and choose a location, you can decide whether to move on to the next step or not. With one click, you can switch into the more powerful SAM environment to investigate the detailed nuances of site selection. In SAM, you can fine-tune your potential site, add location, traffic, fuel, and facility details. Then add details for the competition and trade area to get the most accurate simulation of the existing market. The projection gives a clear picture of what to expect from the identified site, like the actual sales projection of 8.213 million annual liters and how your site will impact your competitors. With FuelFacts Heat, you can make a wise decision before any major skin is in the game. It's just that easy, all from your computer. Increase your site selection accuracy, lower your risk, lower the cost of development, speed up the whole process, and enjoy its simplicity. For an online demonstration, contact SiteCheck Resource Group today.
You know, it occurs to me, Ron, we better hope nobody actually builds a site on that section we keep using for our demos, or it'll change our heat map.
My gosh. Yes, I agree. I'm just going to go back to this my last PowerPoint slide. And Aaron, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, I think we're done, Aaron. Any more questions come in?
Not yet. I think we're good for questions. So,
Okay.
so yeah, if we're done, I just want to obviously thank you on behalf of Convenience and Car Wash Canada for presenting today. You know, there's some awesome info that you've shared with our audience, which is great. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. And
Thanks for having us.
hosting us. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
take care.
Okay, bye.
You still there, Doug?
Yeah. So, are you guys, can you still hear me?
Yes.